Welcome to MSP Confidential. I have a very special guest today in MJ Shore from CompTIA, and we're going to get into a bit of the story of CompTIA, a bit of the vision, the strategy, some of the stuff that CompTIA works on for the industry at large, and of course the MSP community, which I'm so fond of, and see what kind of little things we can uncover about the future of CompTIA and things that you're working on. But welcome, NJ. How are you, man?
I'm good, Luis. I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and thank you for your time, of course.
Of course.
We're in Chicago for CCF, which is one of the staple events. You know, for those who haven't been to a CCF, maybe give the high-level sales pitch.
CCF's a different event. It's a lot of people know us for ChannelCon, which is our premier event that happens in the summer, and they're like, so is CCF like a mini ChannelCon? Not really. It's very different. We bring together about 200 plus of our most engaged members, and it's all around working sessions. It's all around looking at the needs of the industry, initiatives that we can put together, deliverables we can create for our members that become part of the member benefits that our members have access to. So it's a combination of an annual update on the state of the CompTIA community, some research updates, some educational updates, and then breaking out into working sessions. So one of the great ones we had this year was we've globally relaunched our Advancing Women in Tech initiative. There are interest groups in all of our regional groups around the world. The first one kicked off last month in the Benelux region at a meeting in Antwerp, Belgium. And then here in Chicago, we just had an amazing AWID interest group meeting yesterday where we're digging into everything from how do we reach young women who may not even know that the channel has career opportunities for them, that they don't have to be technical, but if they are technical, obviously. But there were young women around the table who were in business development, marketing, HR. It was amazing, and it was awesome to listen to them, right? Because I'm a little older than you, but we're starting to age out in our knowledge and understanding of the right way to reach the younger generations. And the input was phenomenal. And we were talking about all kinds of different things, but all about supporting opportunity for women. And one of the suggestions, which was kind of cool, kind of radical, but we're actually going to think about it. One of the suggestions was, hey, if you want to speak at ChannelCon, you have to show that your company has gender equity, that you have defined policies around DEI and specifically gender equity, or you can't talk. We're like, okay, that's something to think about.
Interesting. That's a way to forcibly change the baseline.
Right. The interesting thing was in all those comments too, which I really loved, was it'll be great when we get to the point where we don't need this initiative anymore.
Yeah.
And that's as a father of two girls, or two women, now they're adults, that resonated, right? It's kind of disappointing, I guess, that in 2024 we're still concerned about this as an issue.
Yeah, and this is a topic that comes up a lot, with my other vendor acquaintances, people that work at other vendor companies and MSPs. I think the challenge for the last little while has been there's just such a lack of women even in the process to enter the space. And so the candidate pool has obviously these shortcomings, and it's difficult to try to move towards gender equity when the candidate pool does not even have close to the necessary amount of candidates to try and achieve that. So, how is CompTIA thinking about sort of this early access to the candidate pool? Obviously the certifications are a way to create talent and bring people into the space, but are there other initiatives that maybe are below the surface level?
Yeah, we're trying to take a holistic approach to it, right? Our certification and training team has been focused on this for as long as we have on the community side, and I would say that we're doing a better job every day. There's still room for improvement, and there's always room for improvement, right? And that's also sort of our culture, right? I always say we're grateful but not satisfied. Like, we know we may be doing good things in an area, but we know there's even more good things we could do. So, we've definitely done a lot of work about from either we're in the process of redesigning and relaunching a lot of our entire online presence, and it'll be based around personas. And so obviously some of those personas are women who may be in the workforce and are looking for a change in career. So if they're out there searching for career opportunities, we want them to know that tech is a very viable opportunity. And we've got many success stories that we've done around helping different populations of women break into technology without going back to school for 4 years, without taking on massive debt, things like that. Then there's also the side of, for example, CompTIA Spark, that the curriculum that CompTIA Spark puts out for free is focused on middle school age kids to get that, before they get to high school, because throughout North America, this is true for both the US and Canada, it's different in some of our global regions, but in the North American market, by the time kids get to high school, the guidance counselors have already bucketed them. They're like, you're going to a liberal arts school, you're going to an engineering school, you're going to a trade school. Technology isn't in that conversation as much as it needs to be. So if we can get the kids before they get there excited about tech and confident about tech, those kids will be able to walk into those guidance offices and say, no, I want to go into tech. And it may not be technical tech. It may be, I want to pursue a career in business development in a technology company. I want to evangelize for technology, but I don't want to actually build the technology. Or you've got the people who are like, hey, I want to be an engineer and I want to build the next great thing, or I want to work on the latest evolution of ChatGPT, whatever the hot trend of the moment is. And then we're also, specifically to women, there's a parallel program there called Tech Girls, where we partner with third-party organizations to deliver workshops, out-of-school workshops. So these are afternoon programs, weekend programs. That's specifically focused on young girls, to get girls to realize this is a viable career for me. So we're trying to do a lot of things, and of course the community with AWIT and with everything else we're doing, and then also just how we show up in the world, right? I'm very, very lucky that across my two teams, I have more female leaders than male leaders. And that's, there were the right people for the right, there were the right people in the right seat. And we've got a very, CompTIA has always had just phenomenal gender equity, not even necessarily by design, but our CEO is super focused on it. He wants to see gender, racial equity, parity, and pay, the whole 9 yards. He's laser focused on that. And that drives a really positive and supportive culture. So we're trying to do the right things, and hopefully it's resonating.
Well, that's incredible. And this is just, I guess, one of the issues. There are so many issues that CompTIA, or challenges that CompTIA is tackling, I think, as a whole. What can you say about the CompTIA vision? And, I don't want the website slogan, but tell me a bit about your strategy, your vision for the CompTIA community in particular.
Sure. Well, we've known each other long enough. I'm transparent, and I tell it like it is. It's a combination, right? There's a vision for what we know we can do. We sit in a unique place in the industry as a nonprofit, vendor-neutral trade association. So we can do some things that vendors aren't going to do. It's not because they may not want to do, but vendors have to focus on what vendors have to focus on. They have to produce killer, cutting-edge solutions, support those solutions, sell those solutions. The whole ecosystem has to focus on what they have to focus on. So we're able to fill an interesting gap where we can bring the fiercest of competitors together to collaborate and work on initiatives that are going to benefit everyone. Because you know what? If it benefits competitor A, it really does benefit competitor B, because it helps them both have more of an impact and on the industry, on our collective customers, on their own business goals, and it trickles down throughout the whole ecosystem. I mentioned vendors, but it applies to all channel companies, the solution providers, the MSPs, pick your acronym. Distributors, then you got all the peer group companies, business services companies. It helps everybody. So we're in a unique spot. So the vision is really to focus on whatever will have the most positive impact on the industry as a whole, to keep elevating the stature of this industry, to keep enabling as much opportunity as we can. I know that all sounds very esoteric and high level, but that's where it starts. And then you come down into, okay, what are the specific strategies, initiatives, business outcomes that we're going to drive? And that's 100% driven by our members. We are, look, we're smart people. I was an MSP for almost 20. I'm not saying I'm a smart guy, but I was an MSP for almost 20 years.
Before it was even MSP.
Right. Before, that's true. Before it was even MSP, I remember. You'll appreciate this. This is funny. This is dating myself, but I remember the first monitor we had up in the office had "What's Up Gold" triggers on all of our customer servers, and we're pinging for DNS, and oh my God, I can't even remember all the different DHCPs. Or we're pinging everything. Like, oh my God, the red light went off. We got to call the customer and save them. And then lo and behold, within a couple of years, like, hey, that's MSP. I'm like, pretty cool.
Interesting. Yeah.
Wasn't my idea, trust me. These were things that, again, I joined CompTIA as a member in the year 2000. So my God, 24 years ago. But it was, it was from getting engaged in the community and talking to others, and that ideas start to percolate. And you do these things. And so anyway, where I was going is it all comes back to we're very, very, even though we've all got a lot of good experience and we're all smart people, we're also humble and self-aware enough to say, look, we don't know all the answers. We need to hear from our members. I need you to tell me what's going to help you as a professional, what's going to help your organization. I need every member to share that, as frequently and as clearly as they possibly can, and we will laser focus on those initiatives. So one of the things we do is we bring, we're structured, we have got regional groups around the globe, we've got interest groups, we've got meetups that happen every month, so we get a lot of input, and we make sure that we share that input as a full team, we share that input as a leadership team. Then once a year, late November, early December, we bring together all the volunteer leaders of these different groups that are out there for what we call our year-end planning meeting. Because we're in the tech industry, of course, there's an acronym for it. We call it YEPM, YEPM, how original. But we look at all the input that we've gotten over a year, and we say to these volunteer leaders, what are you hearing in your different regions? So we've got representatives from ANZ, from ASEAN, from DACH, Benelux, UK and I, North America. So we're getting that global perspective. We're looking for where the connecting points are and all of this stuff. And this year we came away with 12 high-level themes that we then boiled down to 6 themes that we're executing on. And the rest of the 12 actually became sub-bullets to those. But that's solely from member feedback. Member feedback. CompTIA, this would be hugely helpful for us. Can you execute on that? And we look at it, we go, yep, we can execute on that. We can budget for that. Let's go attack it. And then it's a constant process of sharing with the members. Okay, are we meeting the mark? One of the big items was a member journey, for example. One of the criticisms that we've heard over the years is that there are so many benefits in CompTIA membership. Where do I start? Where do I find it all? It's kind of overwhelming to navigate. Like, okay, so we need a better, we need a roadmap. We need a member journey. So we talked to a bunch of members. We built a member journey. We presented it to everyone, the 70 odd people who were at YEPM. The feedback was, good start, little too prescriptive. We got enough to do in our daily lives. Don't tell us to do this, tell us to do that. Help us do this. Help us do that.
Yeah, do it within the context of my interests. And
exactly.
Do it within the context of my specific journey.
100%. So we took that feedback, we worked on it, we changed some language, softened some language, looked at different ways we could, automate, put some tools in it. It's a work in process. This isn't something that's going to happen tomorrow. But for example, one of the things we're doing at the end of March is we're releasing something. All right, this is humorous. We're calling it CompGPT. How original. But we're releasing a GPT that we've built for our member community within our member portal, so that you could go in and ask a simple question. Hey, I'm this type of employee in this type of company. What resources do you have that would help me advance my career? Right. Or what resources do you have that would help me talk to my customers about generative AI? Whatever it is, take cybersecurity. And it'll pull back all the CompTIA resources that you have access to as a member and make it easier to go. So you can sort of focus your intent. That's an incremental step. That's not the end game. We've got some great ideas and a big project that's probably going to take us the better part of a year to fully execute on. But to really improve how our members can interface with us on a day-by-day basis, we could make it a lot easier. And we heard that, and I love that kind of feedback.
And I love that this feedback is driven by, in many cases, the members of the volunteership from the councils, the working groups, the interest groups, and so on. And so that's something I want to tap into a little bit, because I feel like a lot of, at least in the MSP community, a lot of folks have gotten their start because somebody, lent a hand.
Yeah. Somebody
mentored them. Somebody helped them sort of bring their business from point A to point B. And there's a lot of this, I guess, a pay it forward type of thing. And this shows its head sometimes as the volunteership. That's at least how I felt about joining the CompTIA community.
Yeah.
Somebody helped me in my early days, and it was kind of my way to come in and provide some of that knowledge and learning and experience back to the community in some way. But sometimes people come in and they want to participate somehow and don't even know how to raise their hand in this situation. So maybe for those MSPs out there wondering, I'd love to get involved with CompTIA from a volunteer perspective. What's the best way to raise their hand?
Yeah. I mean, the best way to raise your hand is to talk to people. To talk to staff, to talk to other members. You're a great example, right? You just described your journey there, and that's great, because the community thrives when people like you step forward and say, "Hey, I've been there. I've bruised my knuckles. I've scraped my knee, and this is what I've learned." And you can share that, and you can help others who are walking in a similar path avoid some of those mistakes. What's great about our community, because we sit in that intersection of the entire industry, it's different than a partner community, right? Because in a partner community, and the partner communities have a very, very important role to play, because that lets you look. I was a ConnectWise partner when I had my MSP, right? IT Nation was huge for me, because I was able to interface, I was able to learn a lot more about the point solutions and how to optimize and leverage those. I was a CompTIA partner as well, and same thing in their community, and there are a million other communities out there, and those are important, because that lets you get that more product solution focus. What's unique here is we bring all of that together in one place, and so it's not as much about the partners or the solutions that you're using. It's more about the business issues and the business topics that come up around that, and the more common threads that cut across. It doesn't matter who your EDR vendor is, who your RMM vendor is, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these issues are universal. And so it's a place where you can really accelerate and build on what you get from the individual partner communities in a way that, again, in a unique spot that we sit in the industry, and we're very cognizant of that, and we feel a strong sense of responsibility to that. So, to your question about MSPs, you dip your toe in the water, right? You come to an event and you see what it's all about, or you join a webinar or a meetup, and you see what it's about, and you make, the peer-to-peer connections is always in our top 3 of member value. We just did our most recent 24 member satisfaction survey, and the top 3 were cybersecurity programs, it was the peer-to-peer networking, and the member education. It makes perfect sense, right? It makes perfect sense.
Well, and it's so interesting too, like I sit on the SaaS Ecosystem Advisory Council, and it's 10 people from varying parts of the vendor ecosystem as well. And it's interesting how self-regulating it is, to remove the, abstract the individual products or the individual swim lanes that each of the vendors are in, to try and work towards this common goal and kind of get past that initial, it's like, well, what is the interest of my company here and how am I serving it? And it really kind of gets past that very quickly. And even new members come in, you kind of notice the agenda maybe on display for the first couple of meetings, but quickly it moves on to this interesting, hey, there's a bigger agenda here, which is the industry as a whole, raising the tide for all boats, et cetera, et cetera. Which brings me to a bit of this, I guess, cybersecurity conversation. Now, we just had the cybersecurity award, leadership awards, and it was interesting to see, some of the folks that are very visible in our industry trying to raise the tide for all boats, be nominated and recognized and awarded. But there's one interesting benefit at CompTIA that I think kind of goes under the radar a little bit until a member joins, and becomes aware of it, which is the ISAO. And I know you were part of the genesis of
Yeah.
ISAO. And so a couple questions. One, what is it about ISAO that is so compelling for any vendor or any MSP to be a part of today that they're maybe missing? Like if they haven't joined ISAO or CompTIA to get access to ISAO, why are they missing out?
Sure. I mean, the ISAO has very quickly become like almost the leading member benefit.
And define ISAO.
Yeah, I will, yes. Thank you, good point. I mean, it's right up there with our research in my book. But the ISAO stands for Information Sharing and Analysis Organization. It's a US government construct. It started from, it originated with a presidential executive order that created ISACs, which are Information Sharing and Analysis Centers. That's focused on critical infrastructure. So those are organizations that focus on cyber threats to utilities, water systems, banking, healthcare, et cetera, for national security reasons, and very integrated into the Five Eyes intelligence consortium. So the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. That has a very, very tight focus, and then so that originated during the second Bush, or you shouldn't say second, but the
George W.
GW. Thank you. I'm like, what's the difference between the father and the son? But during the George W. Bush administration, and then the Obama administration created the construct of the ISAO to address communities of interest. So. Okay, a membership community, right? A global channel community. Perfect. So what it is it's all about cyber threat intelligence. Governments have been exchanging cyber threat intelligence for years, as have the Fortune 50, Fortune 500. But it is a massive amount of data. It is highly technical. It requires extremely high-skilled cybersecurity experts to act on. What these organizations do,
or even interpret,
and I'm gonna say something that's not gonna have the best connotation, but it's here I am being transparent. These organizations dumb it down for everybody, not the end user, not the business owner, but for MSPs, for the vendors, for everyone. The vendor community and larger MSPs can afford to build out properly skilled cybersecurity teams. But what do we know about the MSP community? The majority are small businesses
teams,
themselves, right? They can't afford that expertise. They can partner with it in some cases, but the point of the ISAO is to take this critically important yet massively complicated information flow and make it actionable and understandable for our community. So, one of my goofy cliches is, we always joke about this business, you're drinking from a fire hose. And when I look at cyber threat intelligence, that's a freaking water cannon. You just get flattened against the wall unless you have the right expertise to consolidate that into information that you can understand and act on.
And I think the whole
excuse me. Okay, I think I'm done. Nope. They always come in threes.
And I think the whole landscape is definitely sort of helped or forced the sense of urgency that people have to evolve. But you're right, it's a massive amount of information flow. And I think what starts as a very, I'm going to subscribe to this RSS feed here and this other RSS feed here, we're going to just pipe them into teams, very quickly becomes this completely unintelligible, or even you can't process it, it's too much information. And then you also don't necessarily, as a small MSP team, the average MSP being 7 people, does not have the capacity in-house to even act on the data. But I think the awareness is a big piece of it. And ISAO access comes free with membership to CompTIA.
Yeah.
And so,
the key is, to your point, is every single threat advisory that comes out has it has 3 important tags. So it'll say right up front, first thing, it'll say actionable, informational. So if something's informational, you don't have to look at it right away. If something's actionable, it means there's an exploit in the wild and there are mitigation steps here. So you look at that. And then there's a severity, high, medium, low, typical traffic light. So that's easy. And then there's something called the traffic light protocol, which dictates sharing. I won't spend any time on that because that starts to get a little bit into the weeds. But the point is, like when the most recent Screen Connect exploit came out, actionable, severity high, and a TLP green, which means share it as loudly as you can to help the community as a whole. And it had very specific mitigation steps. And in that case, because that was a vulnerability that had the impact to have, or had the potential rather, to have a very, very significant impact, we made the decision to open that up to the world. You didn't even have to be a CompTIA member or an ISOM member to get that. We made it publicly available because the potential was so severe. Now, the response to that was handled very well. That's a whole nother topic. And fortunately, that did not accelerate into a massive thing. But we've done that when the CompTIA exploit happened a few years ago. We did it at the start of the Russian-Ukraine war. When there are significant events that have the potential to really cause global havoc, we will open that up globally.
Sure.
But we've issued over 4,000 threat reports. Those are coming into members, and a lot of members are using the tools that they have for their ticketing systems to filter and look for their technology stacks, look for keywords to then open urgent tickets to get attention out. There are many, many different ways that you can parse and leverage this information. But there's also what we call an online cyber hub, where our members are also collaborating and sharing information about different cybersecurity topics and helping one another. So it's a self-supporting community within the community focused on, okay, how do we help MSPs that aren't going to have their own SOC, not going to have their own cyber engineers on staff? How do we help them make sure that they're maintaining the right awareness of what's going on out there? Because half the battle is exactly that, awareness.
Yeah.
If there's enough noise coming from all of the members of this community trying to fight back against an exploit, the hackers are going to have a harder time. The hackers have a great time when we don't talk about it. They're like, I'm having a good time now.
Now, I feel like, for a trade organization like CompTIA, maybe one of your responsibilities or duties is to be able to see around the corner of the trends of the industry. And you guys spend a lot of time doing deep research, deep analysis, and publishing these incredible reports. And I think this is one of the biggest values to at least the vendor space, is understanding what's actually happening out there. Because it's easy to be in your own echo chamber, but
100%.
But tangentially to this conversation about cybersecurity, there's also this the compliance and the regulation piece. And I think there's an interesting undercurrent of conversation starting to happen about how do we get in front of the compliance and regulation that's going to, I think it's going to surprise a lot of people when it suddenly is here and they have no choice. But it's interesting to me that the industry does not seem to be self-adopting the compliance and regulation or adherence to standards of their own volition, unless they're sort of very, very security forward or doing, but the vast majority of small businesses, if they don't have to do it, they're not going to do it. They don't even know they have to do it. And if their MSP doesn't have to spend a lot of time, standing up a compliance program, helping deliver this to their clients, is changing a bit of the relationship they have with clients to start doing this. But tell me a bit about, Trustmark, some of the visibility that CompTIA is trying to create around security, compliance, and regulation.
Yeah, so you're spot on. A trade association has a fundamental responsibility to its members to sort of let them know what may be coming. And over the years, we focused on many different technologies. We focused on drone, for example. We thought drone might be, a new technology opportunity for MSPs. Drone turned out to be a very niche kind of solution, right? It's big in public safety, it's big in energy, it's big in agriculture, but typically with very, very specialized firms that are only dealing with those types of solutions. So, we had at one point an advisory council for drones to look at that and to try and educate the membership about, you might want to think about a drone service offering. And then we said, no, that's actually, those are very specialized companies. And some of them are members, but the bread and butter MSP isn't going to have a drone practice. So we migrated that information online. We still have it, we still update it so that if someone's interested in it, it's there. Then you think of something like, I don't know, there's this thing called artificial intelligence. I've been seeing, every now and then.
A couple mentions in the
Right.
news. Yeah.
You know, we've had an advisory council, an AI advisory council for 6-7 years. And, you know, a lot of people are like, okay, that's interesting, but yeah, I don't really see that coming into my business or my customers'
It's their 15 minutes now.
Huh, look what happened. So, you know, sometimes it's more relevant than not, but, you know, blockchain's another one, right? You know, most MSPs aren't going to be doing any blockchain work, but yet they may need to understand what blockchain is and how it interfaces because their customers may
To
run
the same
into it.
extent you understand electricity in many ways. You know, it's
Good
kind of,
analogy.
it's an interesting
Yeah.
sort of transition that
Right.
blockchain goes from this sort of very, very high level, trendy topic to suddenly just becomes part of the infrastructure of the internet.
Right. You know, I know how to wire switches and lights in my house and everything, but I won't go near a transformer. Forget it. You know, I'll zap myself for sure. But you know, when it comes to Trustmark, things like that, you know, there was a great fireside chat this morning here at CCF about the State of the Channel report that was just released, and Carolyn April and Seth Robinson, who are our two research rock stars, were talking, and Carolyn specifically mentioned, you know, that when you talk about governance, for example, there's an uppercase G and a lowercase g, and the uppercase G is you know, government, it's big regulation and how that impacts us and our customers. And the lowercase g is the governance that you implement within your own business. And one of the things that we've seen, and this shouldn't be news to anyone, the majority of MSPs are like the cobbler's kids, right? You know, they're saying the right things. They may be offering their customers the right baseline cybersecurity solutions. They may not be taking care of their own backyard, and that's a huge concern, because they may be doing the right thing for the customers, but if they're not paying attention to their own solutions, they're that neck of the funnel that opens up to the wide, you know, attack surface of all these customers, and we've seen that exploited time and time again.
Plays over and over again. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, CompTIA used to, you know, a lot of trade associations will lobby governments to try and influence legislation. And CompTIA did that for over a decade. The problem we faced and confronted was that oftentimes our membership is at odds with itself. Because we represent the entire ecosystem, we've got the smallest MSP to the largest vendor. Well, they don't always have the same interests as it relates, or agenda, as it relates to regulation. The other thing we ran into, so sometimes we would have to think about, can we even take a position on this, because we've got to be responsible to these differing constituencies. The other harsh reality of it, and this is something that I think resonates for a lot of people, there's way too much money in government, meaning money, influence money. Right. And in the case of cybersecurity, it's the insurance industry that's going to drive the eventual outcome. They are investing tens of millions of dollars, probably hundreds of millions of dollars, trying to influence what regulation comes out. We've already seen some of the negative impacts where MSPs are having to pay higher premiums. Sometimes premiums become out of reach. Sometimes insurance policies are not being renewed. The pressure point is there, and it's coming from a Goliath out there in private industry that CompTIA can't afford to compete with. None of us can afford to compete with.
And we were observing recently in a conversation that, you know, in the last 5 years, insurance has done more to move cybersecurity forward than any other initiative.
So to your point, legislation will come. I don't have a strong sense yet whether it's coming 18 months, 24 months, 2 months, 20 years. I mean, literally, it's that all over the map. And of course, you also have the disparate interests of the US government, the Canadian government, the European Union, you know, on and on it goes. So it's also, you know, wouldn't it be great if the world would align around standards? So you're also running the risk, and you're seeing some individual states in the US implementing different things. And so the prospect of having to go through compliance hurdles for potentially dozens of different types of regulation is scary. And so we put together what we call the Cybersecurity Trustmark to try and hedge against that. We can't guarantee that it's going to address whatever the regulatory requirements are that come down. But what we do know, we've learned from experience. We launched a cybersecurity trust mark back in, I believe it was 2008. We called it the Security Trust Mark Plus at that time. I was a member at the time, and I went through it, and it was a grueling audit process. And we thought the industry was ready, but the industry wasn't ready. The industry didn't really rally around that. We relaunched, we have a cybersecurity programs team led by Wayne Selk, who's a great cybersecurity thought leader. We completely rebuilt the cybersecurity trust mark. It doesn't require an organization to adopt any new framework. It can map to whatever framework you're focused on. We don't want to be in the framework.
Self-attestation,
Yeah. If you're CIS, if you're NIST, if you're
SOC 2,
NIST 2 that's coming in the EU, SOC 2, etc. Great, you can map to that. And the most important component of this is it's achievable, and you can go down multiple paths. So as you said, you can do a self-attestation where you're saying I adhere to all of these controls. You can also do a third-party fully audited attestation, and you'll have that. That's the one that I think will have the most skin in the game, for lack of a better word, in terms of hedging against legislation, because we're involved in the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative with CISA in the US, we're talking with the NCSC in the UK, the NIST 2 folks in the EU, ANZ. We're talking to all of these different governments, and we're trying to get them to recognize the trust mark as the logical first step within the channel to properly secure yourselves and address the concerns of regulators. So our hope is that when legislation finally materializes and actually gets into law, that you'll be able to take your trust mark and say, I'm checking those boxes because I've already been through this audit that actually complies with all of these things. So we're hoping it will make it much simpler for our community to respond to whatever regulations come in the markets that you work in. And we're also talking with different insurance consortiums to make sure that what we're doing will also help, weird play on words, ensure that you can get insurance.
Right. Well, let me tell you a little story, and this kind of speaks to a bit of the challenge from my perspective that I observe. Back in my consulting days, I remember getting a call from this, one residential IT customer. Hey, I've started to do some consulting work for big company A, and they've served me with this list of technology requirements that if I don't comply with this particular behavior, a little bit of a compliance framework, if you will, they won't award me the contract that I'm working on. And so, he works from home. He just does some database development. And so he has, some test computers for servers and stuff like that. And so, we start working down the list, and one of the things is the server has to be in a lockable cage or cabinet. And all these sort of what appear to be onerous requirements for his particular situation. Right. And I find, when you extrapolate that to the average small business or the average MSP, a lot of these compliance frameworks can be extremely onerous. Yes. And so I think there's a lot of pushback simply because this is silly, we're not even doing half of these things. And so therefore it becomes a bit of sort of just the dismissal of the need. And I think small businesses are the same. They're of the position of this is going to cost us money because their MSP has to spin up all these extra activities. Do we have to do it? Well, the answer is no, and it's funny to see sometimes even with customers in the SMB space, it's not until they get a big contract opportunity that requires them to have SOC 2 or ISO 27001 or some framework that suddenly it's the highest priority in the business. And so I guess my commentary, and I'd love your opinions on this, is there seems to be sort of this real gap of I must do it, and I want to do it because it's the right thing to do, and it's I'm not going to do it until somebody forces me to.
Right.
And we kind of need to reconcile these three things, and there's a lot of great people in the industry trying to do that, just sharing the awareness and trying to get people on the right side of history, if you will. But curious about your thoughts and sort of how do we reconcile these challenges?
Yeah. It's funny, we've walked in parallel paths, because I remember I had a customer that was in the healthcare space, and they audited hospitals, and their contracts were with the major healthcare insurance providers, household name organizations.
Right.
And I remember they were the first client I had that got slapped with one of these checklists. Like, to renew our contract, you've got to meet all these requirements. And we had that original Security Trustmark Plus. And so all of the pieces that pertain to their IT partner, we checked every box. And the rest of it, they were a very forward-thinking organization. And the woman that founded the organization just had an innate sense of responsibility, for lack of a better way to say it, around their IT. So they had done all the right things internally already. And then the fact that we came to the table with this Trustmark, we aced those audits. Like I remember the feedback from the audit reps that were coming in from the insurance companies were like, you guys are way ahead of the curve. And that was awesome. And that was a combination of, yes, I was a bit forward thinking. CompTIA was forward thinking at the time with the Trustmark, and I saw the value in that. But I also had a good partner with that customer that also had that same, right. There are far too many that don't, and you're right. They're going to sit there until they get slapped with something. Probably a nasty breach or a hack that's going to put them in a world of hurt. One of the key things we've done with the Trustmark is we've made it very attainable and very affordable. We're not making a dime on it. That's the other unique place that we sit, right? We don't have a remit to make profit. We're a nonprofit. So the costs associated with getting the Trustmark are literally the cost. Like, the only thing you pay for is the third party, the administrative overhead of getting set up for it, which is like $250, and then the actual cost from the auditor to get your audit, which is not big. I think it's somewhere in the $2,500 neighborhood. Don't hold me to that, but this is not a high single digit or double digit thousands kind of expense. We have intentionally kept the costs as low as we possibly can because we believe that's one of the big barriers. People are like, oh, it's just too daunting and too expensive. No, it's not. It's simple, and it's a simple investment that you need to make in your business. You need to differentiate yourself from the competition. You need to prove that you're not just talking the talk, but you're walking the walk and you're doing the right things. That's how we're going to address it. And there are always going to be customers out there that are not going to do the right thing, and you've got to. So, as an MSP, yeah, you have to be willing to fire your customer because they may be more risk than they're worth.
Yeah, this is the supply and demand challenge,
yeah,
of course, because some other MSP pops their head out of the ground and is like, oh, here's a customer that doesn't want to work with the guy that's forcing them to do a compliance program. So
yeah, I will say that within the CompTIA community, I've seen a real sea change over the last couple of years where people are. The majority are absolutely doing the right thing in terms of saying, look, you've got to have, basically they're just baking baseline security into their MSP offering. And that's what you've got to do. It can't be an optional thing. It can't be I'll take the number 8 meal and, oh, no, don't supersize it. I'll just take the regular. No, don't give them the option. Yeah. The number 8 meal includes your baseline cybersecurity. McDonald's is a really bad example, but you get the point. You get the point.
I was just having this discussion a couple weeks ago, actually, how this interesting evolution of the stack was built and security was an afterthought for so many years. And if you think of a pyramid of stack of services and whatnot, security was this little thing that you added as an optional item.
Right.
And for the longest time, MSPs have learned, oh, here's your baseline security, here's your advanced security, here's your super duper security. And it always begs the question is if this is what the customer should have, why do you give them the option of even doing the other two? And so I am seeing a bit of this evolution into, okay, well, that security top of the triangle is kind of becoming this long bar at the bottom of your stack of services. And I see more and more MSPs finally make that transition, which is great.
Yeah.
This compliance, long tail is going to be super interesting to see play out.
Yes, it is. But we're also developing some educational tracks around exactly that. Like the cybersecurity programs team is going to put out a risk management course this year for MSPs, which will help get their heads around that. There'll be, we've got all kinds of different initiatives, again, that our members are asking for to help them get prepared and be ahead of the curve when whatever comes, so that, because whatever happens, there will be some check boxes that you have to check. And so we're trying to help position the CompTIA community member to be able to check as many of those boxes as possible without taking on unreasonable burden in their business, right? They still need to run their business. And so we've really, we haven't cut corners, but we have found a way to make these things manageable for the smaller companies and achievable. That's the most important part. And we launched a year ago at this event, and there were over 900 companies enrolled from 29 different countries. So that, I love the 29 countries. That was awesome. But to get almost 1,000 into this mindset in the first year, that's a nice feather in our cap. There's still a lot of work to do, but we're moving the conversation in the right direction.
Grateful but not satisfied.
Grateful but not satisfied, 100%. 100%.
MJ, what a fascinating conversation. I feel like we could probably do another 45 minutes.
I was like, you got another couple hours? Because this is kind of fun.
Maybe we will catch up and do a sort of a check-in on how the Trustmark program is working, what the adoption rates have been.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me for a few minutes.
Hey, thank you. And check out, go to connect.comptia.org and check the community out if you're not a member now. I mean, we're here. We're not making money off of our community. We're serving our community. So our mission is to help everyone be the best they can be. So if that appeals to you, like you said, if you're at a point in your career where you want to give back and come into this big open tent and work together, we'd love to have you as part of the community.
MJ,
thanks
you so much. Great chatting.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. This has been MSP Confidential. MJ Shore of CompTIA, and we'll see you next week. Ciao.